You wake up before the sun. Not because you're an early riser. Not because you're seizing the day. But because a rooster, who somehow sounds like he's gargling gravel and vengeance, has decided that your eardrums have had enough peace. His screech, proudly unleashed from a nearby dung heap, is the town's unofficial alarm clock. Welcome to your life in a medieval town. Population, not enough soap. There's no snooze button. There's no soft duvet to roll under and pretend you didn't hear it. Your bedding, a generous term, consists of straw stuffed into a linen sack that smells like it's been absorbing disappointment since the plague. Which, to be clear, was not that long ago. Your mattress smells like betrayal. Your pillow is just slightly softer than a sack of rocks, and you, noble sleeper, are covered in an itchy woolen blanket that was last washed during a comet sighting. You scratch. You sigh. And the day begins. So before you get too comfortable, and I say comfortable knowing you're probably trying to fall asleep to the dulcet tones of sewage and sarcasm, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always strangely soothing to know who else is lying in the dark, trying to sleep through medieval horror ASMR. Now, back to the smell of wet wool and medieval morning breath. The first thing you truly notice, aside from the rooster's screech and your rapidly evaporating will to live, is the sound. Medieval towns are noisy. Not in the honking car, espresso machine, guy on a Bluetooth headset kind of way. No. This is a more organic noise. A symphony of chaos, composed entirely by people who have never once considered the concept of volume control. Children shriek with the energy of unpaid taxes. Dogs bark at absolutely nothing, because that's their job. Somewhere a blacksmith is already pounding metal, like he's auditioning for a percussion solo in the apocalypse. And several someones, actually, are throwing open their shutters and dumping last night's chamber pot contents directly onto the street. With flair. With purpose. With zero concern for pedestrians. That sound, that heavy splash followed by a sloshy patter, that's human waste. And it's part of the morning soundtrack now. The streets are paved not with gold, but with a substance best described as mud-adjacent. Technically, it's mud. Realistically, it's a viscous cocktail of dirt, straw, spilled ale, rotting vegetable matter, horse manure, and things you don't want to identify by smell alone. No sidewalks. Just squelching, ankle-deep filth. Fashion tip, wear wooden clogs unless you want your shoes to dissolve like dreams after childhood. The bells of the church begin to clang in the distance, a solemn reminder that time is marching forward whether you like it or not. You're not religious, mostly because you're too poor to afford indulgences and too practical to believe that saints are curing boils, but you still cross yourself out of habit. The church bell is loud, metallic, and constant. It chimes the hours, calls you to prayer, wakes up the demons, and signals to the town's fleas that it's breakfast time. If you're lucky, you live near a church. If you're very lucky, it only rings every 15 minutes. Welcome to the medieval soundscape. It never really stops. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how many animals are living within arm's reach of you. Chickens? Yes. Goats? Definitely. A suspiciously aggressive pig with the eyes of someone who's seen things? Oh yes. These animals are not in a barn or a field or some bucolic pastoral Instagram fantasy. They're here. In your yard. In your alley. Sometimes in your house. That's right, if you're a lower-class urban dweller, your humble home might double as a chicken coop by night and a family sleep chamber by, well, still night, since there's no real concept of privacy or personal space. You're surrounded by sound. The clatter of hooves on cobblestones. The clinking of armor on a city guard walking past, who is definitely not being paid enough to care. The dull roar of a market waking up for the day. Traders shouting prices, haggling, arguing about who stole whose stall, and a fishmonger yelling about his allegedly fresh catch while a suspicious cat glares at him with ancient distrust. A woman cries out in pain. It's her fourth child, and midwifery is less science and more guesswork conducted in a dimly lit room that smells like sour milk and prayers. Someone starts playing a hurdy-gurdy. Badly. You don't know what a hurdy-gurdy is? Don't worry. It's like a violin, but cursed. Imagine the sound of a medieval kazoo mating with a lawnmower. That's your street's background music now. And just when you think you've adjusted, a parade starts. Not a fun one. This is a guild procession. which means it's 27 bakers marching behind a banner, wearing uncomfortable robes, chanting something half religious, half unintelligible, while dropping crumbs in their wake. Somewhere in the crowd, a town crier begins reading out a public notice. He's yelling it, obviously, because he's the closest thing this society has to Twitter. Hear ye, hear you. A new tax on barrels. The punishment for barrel theft is hanging, followed by mild public shame. This is not a joke. There are taxes on everything: barrels, shoes, windows, the right to sell onions. And the sound of these taxes being announced is now part of the daily auditory onslaught. The smells, of course, are the sound's evil twin. Everything that's making noise is also making a scent. And most of them are not good. Bread baking? Lovely. The blacksmith's forge? Sure, that's bearable. But then there's the fish market, the tanner's yard, the guy dumping blood and bones behind the butcher's stall like he's decorating for a meat-themed Halloween party. Every breeze brings with it a new olfactory nightmare. Even nature contributes to the medieval playlist. Birds sing, sure, but they're mostly pigeons, who coo like hungover baritones and leave offerings on every roof. Wind whistles through wooden slats. Rain pounds on thatch, leaks into your shoes, and turns your straw bed into a soggy oatcake. You develop the ability to tell the time based on how wet your clothes are. Night sounds? Oh, they're worse. There's no street lighting. Just the moon, stars, and the occasional torch carried by a night watchman who's legally obligated to shout all is well every hour, even if, say, the town is currently on fire. Which has happened. Multiple times. Thieves move in silence. Rats move in multitudes. Somewhere, an owl hoots like it's judging your life choices. You try to sleep, but you hear your neighbor snoring through the paper-thin wall, a low, guttural sound like someone trying to gargle soup. And occasionally, there's screaming. Not like horror movie screaming. Just medieval screaming. A drunk falling into a ditch. A woman accusing someone of stealing her firewood. A man being publicly flogged for not paying the window tax. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but the town breathes around you. It coughs. It farts. It belches. It moans. It sings. It argues. And always, always, it smells. Now, you may be wondering why anyone would willingly live in a medieval town. The answer? Because the alternative is living in the countryside, where you still die of dysentery, but now you also get frostbite and your only neighbor is a goat named Gregory who hates you. At least in town, you've got markets, a church, and a blacksmith who occasionally flirts with you by not insulting your family. The soundscape of a medieval town isn't just noise. It's information. It tells you who's alive, who's dead, who's selling carrots, and who's cheating on their spouse in the alley behind the apothecary. It's a living organism made of gossip, religion, commerce, and human misery wrapped in a burlap sack. You learn to navigate it. You learn which bell means fire and which means feast day. You know that when the dogs bark in unison, something's gone wrong. You know the difference between a drunken brawl and a festival, which is mostly the presence or absence of a lute. This is your life. This is your town. And this horrible, beautiful, pungent, squawking, cackling, clanging, farting, praying, screaming town sounds like home. And the rooster? He's still at it. You shuffle toward the center of town because, well, you have to. No one's delivering food to your door. No Uber Eats. No online grocery orders. Just your own blistered feet, a mild limp, and the vague hope that the baker hasn't sold out of yesterday's bread yet. You pass by a pig chewing on something you really hope is not human. It makes eye contact with you. You look away. Fast. The pig wins this round. The streets are already alive, if you can call this life. The morning mist hasn't cleared, and the cobblestones are slick with, we'll say moisture, but let's be honest. It's bodily fluid from several species, none of whom had the decency to use a designated area. If you slip, you're not just falling. You're becoming one with the ecosystem. You round a corner and, ah yes, the marketplace. The throbbing, shrieking, clattering heart of any medieval town. It's not a place you visit, so much as a place that assaults you with colors, smells, and shouting. Oh, the shouting. Every vendor believes that volume equals value. You hear a man bellowing about turnips like he's announcing the arrival of the Holy Roman Emperor. One stall is selling fish that look like they died last week and are only now being introduced to the concept of refrigeration, which, by the way, doesn't exist. Another stall is overloaded with beets, leeks, and cabbage. So much cabbage. It smells like someone boiled a sock. A third vendor is selling exotic spices from the east, which might just be dyed sand. But who's checking? If you're looking to buy something, you'll need coin, or a decent trade, or a really convincing lie. Bartering is an art form here. You want 3 onions? Offer 2 eggs and your firstborn son's marriage promise. Want a fresh loaf? Sorry, that's for rich people. You get the dense, underbaked second batch made from reused dough and crushed peasant dreams. Someone sneezes nearby. Loudly. Violently. They do not cover their mouth because germ theory won't be a thing for several hundred years. The particles hang in the air like a medieval curse. You feel the sneeze hit your soul. You consider death as an option. A woman selling herbs is arguing with a monk. Something about fennel and witchcraft. You stop to listen, because nothing spices up a Tuesday like accusations of heresy. He bought 3 sprigs and didn't pay for the rosemary, she hisses. It was time, he protests. You move on. Fast. Never get between a monk and an herbalist. That's how you end up on fire in the town square. Speaking of burning things, let's talk street food. Yes, even in the Middle Ages, people wanted snacks on the go. Just don't picture funnel cakes and tacos. Picture boiled tripe on a stick. Picture meat pies made with questionable meat and definitely questionable crust. Picture stews that have been simmering in the same cauldron for days, developing a unique ecosystem and possibly sentience. There's ale too, obviously. Always ale. Water isn't safe, and wine is for people who own land. Ale is what you drink with breakfast, with lunch, and with quiet existential despair. It's flat, warm, and slightly cloudy, like someone strained soup through a boot. But hey, it gets the job done. And the job is stay hydrated and mildly buzzed so you can tolerate the fish smell. The background music of the market is constant. It's a mix of gossip, livestock bleating, metal-on-metal clinking, the occasional street performer banging a drum, and arguments. Always arguments. Someone's accusing someone of shorting the scales. Someone else is yelling that their goat was stolen. And then there's just ambient shouting, the kind where no one really knows who started it, but everyone agrees it should keep going. A jugger drops his pins. A dog steals a chicken leg. A child throws up in a corner. A knight rides through on a horse that has clearly seen some things, scattering peasants and geese like a medieval bowling game. Let's pause here for a fun little game I like to call What's That Smell? Is it tanned leather? Freshly baked rye? Boiled eel? An open wound? Human waste? Spoiled milk? The perfume of a minor noblewoman who bathes monthly and thinks rose petals can fix hygiene? Trick question. It's all of them. And they've mingled into a scent so powerful it could be bottled and sold as regret number 5. As you pass a cart of onions, stacked precariously like a vegetable Jenga tower, you overhear a merchant bragging about a shipment from Bruges. Silk, maybe. Or fake silk. There's no way to tell unless you want to touch it, and you don't because it's covered in dust, rat droppings, and probably plague spores. You consider buying something. A bit of dried fruit. Maybe a wooden spoon. Maybe a little hand mirror if you're feeling luxurious and want to be reminded of how truly filthy your face is. But your coin pouch contains exactly 2 pennies and a pebble you've been pretending is currency. So instead, you walk on, staring wistfully at a stall with dyed fabric that isn't brown or beige, a true rarity in this beige-based society. The soundscape shifts as a bell rings from the nearby abbey. It's the mid-morning prayer. Time for the devout to pause, kneel, and mumble Latin they barely understand. If you're a vendor, you cross yourself quickly and keep shouting about your turnips. Business and blessings, hand in hand. A nearby beggar starts reciting a poorly rhymed lament about losing his wife, his goat, and his dignity. He might be telling the truth. He might just be angling for a scrap of bread. Either way, he's got a decent rhythm going. Someone tosses him a crust. The pigeons try to steal it. A town crier marches into the square. You brace yourself. Hear you, he shouts, louder than necessary. By order of the mayor, there will be no more unauthorized eel sales. This draws groans from the crowd. Eels are a staple, not because people like them, but because they exist in rivers and don't cost anything to catch. They're the tofu of the medieval world, adaptable, slimy, and spiritually unfulfilling. You notice a shadow pass overhead. Not ominous, just a falcon, maybe owned by a noble, maybe just freelancing. It's followed by a few loud caws from crows, perched on a wooden beam above the market square, looking for dropped meat or unattended infants. You don't know if that's a joke. You hope it's a joke. As noon approaches, the volume increases. Trades become more desperate. Sellers need to offload their wares before they spoil. Buyers haggle harder. You hear a noblewoman arguing the price of a goose, with the focus of someone planning a small war. The clanging returns. The smithy has brought out new wares. Horseshoes, nails, knives, everything metal. He announces this with the subtlety of a marching band, banging on a frying pan with what might be a femur. And then, a hush. Something rare happens. A man in velvet steps forward, surrounded by guards. A tax collector. Everyone freezes. Transactions pause. Bread stops mid-slice. Even the pigs stop chewing. The collector nods once, grimly, and walks toward the counting house. No one breathes until he's gone. Taxes, after all, are paid in coin. And you don't have coin. You have potatoes. The tax office doesn't take potatoes. As the afternoon sun turns the air into a mildly warm soup, rich with notes of sweat, meat, and merchant stress, you retreat from the market. Not because you've bought what you needed, but because your ears are ringing, your nose is offended, and your soul is slightly bruised from exposure to too many people yelling about barley. You step back into a narrow lane, brushing past a man carrying a sack of something leaking. It leaks on your shoes. You don't ask. Behind you, the market roars on. Its rhythm continues. Until evening falls. Until the bells ring again. Until the noise becomes night. We'll get there. You retreat from the chaos of the market, winding through alleys that feel less like streets and more like intimate invitations to be mugged. The sun, now visibly fed up with the day, is lowering itself behind crooked rooftops and smoke-choked chimneys. A mild breeze brushes your face, which is nice until it brings the scent of rotting cabbage, old leather, and probably your own armpits. Welcome to evening in a medieval town. It smells like things you can't afford and consequences you didn't ask for. The streets, which were earlier alive with energy, now begin to close in. Market stalls are being packed up. That one guy who sold suspicious herbs has disappeared, probably to go heck someone. Bakers are locking up their ovens. Blacksmiths douse their forge fires with water and expletives. You can hear them cursing like poets. By the boils of St. Bartholomew's goat, I swear I'll shove this anvil up, and then it's gone, muffled by the creak of shuttered windows. So what happens when the sun goes down? In modern terms, everything closes and your internet goes out. Permanently. You walk toward your home, if we can call it that, a timber-framed, mold-kissed structure you share with several relatives, a goat, and at least one ghost. The roof leaks. The walls lean. And the floorboards creak in Morse code, spelling out "get out while you can." As you approach, someone shouts from a nearby window, "Lock your doors." They say there's a knifeman about. You nod solemnly. You are the knifeman. Or you might be. Everyone is, on some level. It's the Middle Ages. Everyone has a blade, a grudge, and exactly zero access to therapy. Before you settle in, you take a moment to listen. Now we begin the true soundscape of a medieval town. The daytime chaos is gone, yes, but the night brings its own strange concert. A slow, simmering brew of creepy calm and low-grade existential dread. First, the church bells. Always the bells. They don't just mark time. They own it. You hear them toll out Compline, evening prayer. Ding. Pause. Ding. You don't count them, but you know that if you did, they'd be wrong, because no one knows what time it really is. Not exactly. Time is more of a rumor here. A suggestion, really. After the bells die out, other sound creep in. There's the scuttling of rats in the gutter. The clatter of hooves as a lone horse trots past, its rider cloaked and hurrying, probably carrying news, smuggled goods, or just an overinflated sense of purpose. From somewhere nearby, a baby cries. Not in that "I need milk" way, more in that "I've seen too much" way. You hear a mother hush it gently. You imagine her sitting by candlelight, rocking the infant with one hand, while shooing away a bat with the other. A few buildings over, you catch laughter. Loud, drunken, lopsided. The tavern is still alive, its windows glowing like eyes in a drunken skull. You consider stopping by. But then you remember what happened last time. You woke up in a wheelbarrow with 2 chickens, no shoes, and a new tattoo that might be a heretical symbol. No, not tonight. You step into your house. Instantly, the air shifts. It's warmer inside, thick with the scent of cooked beans, burning tallow, and unwashed humanity. You nod at the people within, a grunt here, a raised brow there. Conversation isn't really a thing. Not after sundown. It's more of a series of noises and mutual agreements not to stab each other over blanket space. Candles are expensive. Firewood even more so. So your lighting options are either small flame or blind panic. You go with the flame. A single tallow candle flickers in the center of the room, casting shadows that move like they're judging you. One of them probably is your aunt. As you settle in, you notice the creaks and groans of the building itself. Wooden beams expanding. The wind slipping through cracks. The occasional thump from above. Could be a squirrel. Could be something worse. Medieval homes were never quite empty. There were always things in the walls. In the roof. Under the floorboards. You tried to relax. Outside, the sounds have thinned, but not vanished. You hear a dog barking, followed by another. And then silence, sharp and sudden, as if something shut them up. You tell yourself it's nothing. Maybe they saw a deer. Maybe they saw death. Either way, not your business. Further in the distance, a lute plinks. Badly. Someone is serenading someone else. Or maybe they're just trying to drown out their own sorrow with broken chords and whispered apologies to Saint Cecilia. And then, singing. From the next street over, you hear a group of people chanting. Not Gregorian, no, that's for monks with better real estate. This is local. Crude. Possibly drunk. The lyrics are mostly about someone named Agnes, a turnip, and eternal damnation. It's oddly catchy. You lie back on your straw-filled mattress. It pokes you in 17 different places. It smells like betrayal. Or mildew. Or possibly both. Someone nearby snores. Another person coughs. You hope it's not plague cough. Then again, if it is, you'll all be coughing soon. Plague isn't polite. It doesn't knock. Time crawls. You think you hear footsteps. Just outside the door. Slow. Deliberate. You hold your breath. Nothing. Then a cat screams, that unholy wail that makes your soul attempt to leave your body through your teeth. You jump, curse under your breath, and then pretend you didn't. Because you're a tough medieval person. Definitely not scared of cats. Or ghosts. Or owls that sound like dying men. Still, you don't look out the window. You know better. As the night deepens, the town sleeps. Or tries to. You hear muffled voices. A scuffle in the alley. Something crashes, maybe a bucket. Maybe a body. No one investigates. Curiosity gets you stabbed. Or accused. Or both. A watchman passes by, humming a tune that was last fashionable 3 monarchs ago. He taps his staff on the stones. Tap. Tap. Pause. Tap tap. That's his way of saying, nothing to see here. But I'm watching anyway. Or maybe he's just bored. Medieval law enforcement was mostly just armed loitering. Hours pass like syrup, slow, sticky, and mildly disappointing. Occasionally, a rooster crows too early. Because he's a jerk. And because his sense of time is, like everyone else's, deeply flawed. He crows again. Then a third time. Somewhere, a Bible scholar stirs in their grave. The sounds begin to shift. The silence thins out. A baby stirs. A cart rolls by. A door opens, followed by the scraping of boots. Someone is already heading to the river to wash something, probably guilt. You sit up. Your neck hurts. Your spine sounds like someone stepping on gravel. You stretch, and everything in your body objects. Outside, the town is beginning again. The bells toll. You sigh. The day has reset. Again. And the strange medieval soundscape, full of whispers, wheezes, chants, and chickens, resets with it. But this isn't the end. We still haven't wandered into the church, or braved the local tavern, or survived a festival where fun involves minor injury and major superstition. So, whenever you're ready, you wake up, again, this time to the sound of bells. Not the polite kind. These are the get your soul in line, or else kind. The kind that suggests divine punishment is both real and, frankly, imminent. It's early. Too early. The rooster isn't even pretending to care anymore, and yet, here you are, blinking in the grim half-light of another medieval morning, with straw stuck to your cheek and a distinct smell wafting off your tunic that says, you've made choices. Your joints protest. Your knees sound like someone stepping on a bag of croutons. You shuffle toward the wash basin, which is really just a bucket with trust issues. You splash your face with water cold enough to resurrect St. Peter, and you prepare yourself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, to go to church. Because, in the Middle Ages, you go to church. Everyone does. Even if you don't believe. Even if you can't spell God. Even if you spent the night drunk and now smell like cabbage and sin. You go. Because not going means rumors. And rumors mean inquisitions. And inquisitions mean, let's just say it ends in fire and very few hugs. So you go. The walk to church is somber. The streets are quiet, filled with that peculiar grayness that suggests either divine stillness or that someone's burning wet firewood again. You pass neighbors. No one speaks. Just nods. The same nods you gave them yesterday when you saw them at the tavern trying to kiss the ale barrel. Now you are penitent. Or at least pretending. Which, in this era, is basically the same thing. The church looms ahead. And it really looms. Gothic arches, towering spires, and walls so damp they could host a family of eels. The air is cooler here, still and grave-like. The massive wooden doors creak open slowly, because of course they do, and you step inside. And immediately regret it. The first thing that hits you is the smell. A dizzying cocktail of incense, mildew, beeswax, and human desperation. And maybe feet. Always feet. Then the sound. Oh, the sound. Churches are designed to echo. Every footstep bounces back, and you like it's judging your life choices. A cough sounds like thunder. A sneeze could summon the end times. You tiptoe across the flagstone floor, desperately trying not to make a sound, even though your shoes are essentially wooden noise boxes. Clomp, clomp, clomp. You feel the eyes of 1,000 saints staring down from stained glass windows, each one looking suspiciously like they disapprove of your haircut. You find a seat. Well, a plank. There are no pew cushions here. Just raw wood. The kind that leaves splinters in places you didn't know could splinter. The service begins. It is in Latin. You don't speak Latin. No one around you speaks Latin either. The priest is up front, doing his thing, chanting, gesturing, lighting candles. He's wearing robes that look like someone's grandma made them during a blackout, and he smells faintly of candle wax and existential exhaustion. You try to follow along. You really do. But between the hunger pangs and the wooden bench grinding against your tailbone, it's a losing battle. Your eyes begin to glaze. The words melt into a soft, droning lullaby, like a Gregorian version of hold music. You catch yourself nodding off and then suddenly jolting awake when the priest slams his book shut like it owes him money. The sermon begins. It is long. Very long. It covers everything from fire and brimstone to why dancing is evil to how women's ankles are the gateway to Satan. You look over at the local blacksmith, who is definitely asleep. His head is tilted at a dangerous angle, and he's gently drooling into his beard. You envy him deeply. There's a reading about Saint Sebastian getting shot with arrows. A story about a nun who insulted a bishop and then got struck by lightning. A parable about how eating meat on a Friday will result in your cow giving birth to a snake. No one questions this. Everyone nods solemnly, as if they've all personally known a snake cow. And then, of course, comes the part where you kneel. The part where your knees meet cold stone and instantly file a complaint with your spine. You kneel. You pray. You mostly pray for the pain to stop. There is a moment of silence, broken only by a child whispering too loudly, "Is it over yet?" and being swiftly smacked by his grandmother, whose hand moves faster than divine justice. Eventually, the service ends. The priest mutters a final benediction that sounds suspiciously like a grocery list. People cross themselves, rise slowly, creaking and groaning like haunted furniture, and begin to file out. You linger. Not because you're extra holy. Because your foot has fallen asleep and now feels like a bag of wet flour. Once you regain circulation, you shuffle out with the others. The sunlight hits your face like a slap from heaven, and you squint up at the sky, wondering how it's only mid-morning and you already feel like you've lived 1,000 years. Outside the church, townspeople gather to gossip in hushed tones about everything from Sister Agnes's new wimple, too bright, practically scandalous, to the rumor that the mayor's cousin may have eaten meat during Lent. Meat during Lent. Might as well have summoned the devil with a kazoo. You overhear an old man telling a child that if he lies, his tongue will be eaten by birds. The child nods, wide-eyed. You nod too. Not because you believe it, but because in this town, belief is mostly about survival. Some people head to confession, a small wooden booth that smells like regret and cabbage. Others light candles, whisper prayers, and rub small relics that are probably real. Saints' finger bones. A bit of cloth from Jesus' tunic. A splinter from the true cross. At least one genuine feather from the angel Gabriel, which looks suspiciously like it came from a goose. You do your part. You genuflect. You drop a coin into the donation box. Well, it's actually a button and a pebble, but you make it look like a coin. The box is guarded by a stern nun with hawk eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. You nod at her. She nods back. It's a tense peace. Then you exit the church grounds and re-enter the world. And you realize something. For all its smells, sermons, and splinters, the church is the center of the town. Not just physically, but spiritually, socially, emotionally. It's where you get married, where you get buried, where you go to repent for that thing you did in the woods last week with the stolen goose and the questionable song lyrics. It's a place of rules, of rituals, of robes and relics and rumors. A place where belief is both armor and weapon, both comfort and control. And for better or worse, often worse, it's the beating, bell-ringing, Latin-chanting heart of your community. But don't worry. There's plenty more suffering to explore. There's the tavern, 4-1. Oh yes, the place where joy goes to die, or at least lose a few teeth. So when you're ready, you push open the door of the tavern, if we can call it a door. It's more like two creaky planks pretending to be useful. They swing outward with a complaint, releasing a warm gust of air that hits your face like a drunk uncle at a family reunion, full of laughter, sweat, smoke, and the lingering scent of pickled onions and crushed dreams. It's evening again, because time, in a medieval town, is just a blur between chores and regrets, and you've made the deeply questionable choice to visit the local tavern. Because there are no movie theaters, no bowling alleys, no Tinder dates. Just this, one large wooden room where everyone drowns their problems in beer that could double as paint thinner. The tavern is dimly lit. A single hearth crackles near the far wall, casting long shadows and a soft orange glow that makes everyone look slightly possessed. Candles line the tables, but their flames flicker nervously, like even they are considering leaving. The air is thick with pipe smoke, spilled ale, body odor, and at least 3 different types of livestock dander. A pig snorts under a bench. A chicken hops across the bar. No one notices. No one cares. There's music, if you can call it that. In the corner, a man with one eye and exactly 3 teeth plucks a lute with such enthusiasm, you almost forget he's wildly off-key. He's accompanied by someone hitting a drum with what might be a shoe. It's unclear if this is a song, or just 2 people arguing through percussion. You step inside fully. Instantly, heads turn. Everyone does a quick mental calculation. Friend or foe? Local or stranger? Do you owe the money? After a moment, they return to their drinks, satisfied that you're neither important nor rich. You find a spot at one of the long wooden tables, stained with the history of 100 brawls and 1,000 regrettable decisions. The bench creaks beneath you like it remembers better days. Days before you sat on it. The tavern keeper waddles over. She's a large woman with arms like cured hams and a voice like thunder during tax season. "What'll it be?" she grunts. You ask for ale. She scoffs. "We've got brown or brown. Pick one." You pick brown. She slams down a clay mug with a slosh of liquid that bubbles ominously. You take a sip. It tastes like someone tried to brew resentment and rainwater inside an old boot. You nod approvingly. It's perfect. Around you, the tavern hums. There's the dice game in the back corner, small stones rattling in a wooden cup, followed by cheers, groans, and the occasional accusation of sorcery. There's the couple in the shadows, whispering secrets that are almost certainly illegal, immoral, or both. There's the loud man in the middle of the room, retelling the same story about how he fought 3 wolves with his bare hands, which, judging by his total lack of scars and general limpness, probably involved more running and less heroism. And then, of course, there's the brawl. It begins the way most medieval tavern brawls begin, with eye contact that lasts just a little too long. A mun bumps into another. An ale is spilled. An insult is muttered, something about someone's mother and a goose. And suddenly, fists are flying, stools are toppling, and the bard is still playing because this is the most attention he's had in months. You scoot your bench backward just in time to avoid a flying trencher. It hits the wall with a slap. Bread, cheese, and what might have once been meat slide to the floor. A dog immediately appears to clean it up. You're not sure if the dog belongs to anyone. It might run the place. Honestly, that'd make sense. The fight escalates. Chairs break. Someone throws a jug. A tooth clinks onto the floor, followed by its owner crawling after it like it's a drop coin. The tavern keeper doesn't interfere. She just watches, arms crossed, occasionally yelling things like, "Not the ale barrel," and "Take it outside if you're gonna bleed that much." Eventually, someone lands a punch so poorly timed it knocks himself out. The fight ends not with resolution, but with exhaustion. Everyone slumps back into their seats, bruised and grumbling, and resumes drinking as if nothing happened. This is the tavern. It's not a place for peace. It's a place for noise, for laughter too loud and sorrow too heavy, for songs that sound like mourning and dances that look like seizures. It's where secrets are traded for coins and coins are traded for drinks and drinks are traded for even worse secrets. You sip your ale again. It hasn't improved, but you're beginning not to mind. Near the hearth, a group begins to sing. A low, mournful song about love lost to plague, or maybe to taxes. Everyone joins in, off-key and off-rhythm, but with the sincerity of people who know that nothing ends well and everything ends eventually. You catch a snatch of conversation. And then the bishop said it wasn't heresy, but I still think the goat looked funny. My cousin got arrested for stealing onions again. That's the 3rd time. They say the miller's wife can talk to spirits. Probably just drunk again. These are the whispers of a medieval town, half-truths, full lies, and the occasional prophecy shouted by a mun who hasn't bathed since Michaelmas. At some point, food is served. You didn't order it. No one does. It just appears. A bowl of stew, thick and lumpy and suspiciously gray. You poke at it. It pokes back. You eat it anyway, because you haven't eaten since yesterday and your stomach is threatening to secede from the rest of your body. It tastes okay. Mostly onions and regret. But it's warm. And in a town where warmth is a luxury, that's enough. Later, the door opens again. A gust of wind blows in, scattering straw and dreams. A stranger steps inside, cloaked, mysterious, probably someone important in disguise. Or maybe just someone looking for a latrine. You never find out. You lean back against the wall. The fire crackles. Someone starts a new story. Something about a ghost in the woods that sings at night and steals your shoes. Everyone listens, half believing, half asleep. And that's the real magic of a tavern. It's where reality softens. Where stories become true, if only for an evening. Where people forget the mud, the taxes, the hunger, the laws, the looming threat of disease and war and sudden theological arguments. Here, in this loud, smoky, smelly place, with its cracked mugs and cracked teeth and cracked morals, people find something like comfort. Or distraction. Which, in the medieval world, is close enough. You rise to leave. Your legs are stiff. Your head buzzes with ale and ambient trauma. You step out into the night, full of stars and fog and possibly wolves. The tavern door creaks shut behind you, muffling the songs, the laughter, the sobs. It's cold again. It always is. But at least, for a while, you were warm. And that's what matters. Tomorrow, we'll visit the fields. Where peasants toil, nobles pretend they invented agriculture, and the sun works overtime trying to kill you. So when you're ready, you wake up to the sound of coughing. Again. This time it's not your neighbor hacking up a lung, though he probably is, somewhere, heroically losing the battle against 14th century air quality. No. This time it's the wheezing groan of a wooden cart while struggling to remember how circles work. Someone's already heading to the fields, and you, blessed creature of serfdom and obligation, must now join them. You stretch. You regret it. Your spine makes a noise like a breadstick snapping in slow motion. You throw on your tunic, the same one you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and the week before that, and technically forever. It smells faintly of damp wool and generational trauma. You grab your tools, a hoe that's more rust than metal, a bucket with dreams of becoming firewood, and your lunch, which is a crust of bread, a leek, and an irrational hope for survival. Out the door you go. The village is already stirring. Chickens peck listlessly at the mud. A goat screams, as goats do, possibly in Latin. Children shuffle past, dragging their tiny feet toward wherever children go, when school doesn't exist and fun hasn't been invented yet. You nod to an old man smoking a pipe. He nods back. Neither of you speaks. Because in the Middle Ages, most conversations are just grunts and resigned eye contact. The walk to the fields is short but soul-crushing. The path is lined with thorny bushes and the occasional suspicious pile that might be animal dung or a peasant's opinion. You pass the town's one tree, which is half dead, slightly bent, and still considered a landmark. A rooster sits on a fence post, judging you with the calm superiority of something that lays eggs and doesn't pay taxes. And then, just past the crooked fence and the haunted scarecrow that hasn't scared anything since the famine of '83, you arrive. The fields. Vast. Muddy. Endless. They stretch out in all directions like the world's saddest tapestry. The soil is dark, damp, and deeply unimpressed by your presence. Every inch of land here has been plowed, tilled, retilled, and overworked by generations of desperate hands, and yet, it still manages to yield mostly turnips and disappointment. You step into the field. Your feet sink instantly, swallowing your shoe in a squelch that sounds disturbingly like someone giving up. You extract yourself with a grunt. You mentally prepare for 10 hours of bending, digging, lifting, and trying not to die. Your fellow field workers are already in position. There's Mad Elric, who talks to worms. There's Elspeth, who once got hit by lightning and now claims she can smell ghosts. There's young Wymond, who is technically 12 but has the back pain of a pensioner and the wisdom of a tired goat. Everyone's hunched. Everyone's grumpy. Everyone's covered in mud, including places where there shouldn't be mud. And now, so are you. The work begins. You hoe the earth in slow, back-breaking motions. You plant seeds that may or may not grow. You pull weeds that seem to regenerate faster than royal scandals. Your hands blister. Your back complains. Your legs begin to mutiny. You glance at the sky. The sun is already too bright, like it's mocking you. There's no shade. No water. No cloud cover. Just you, your slowly roasting skin, and the ever-present risk of getting sunburned and rained on in the same hour. And the flies. Oh, the flies. They're everywhere. They buzz around your face. They land on your food. They dive bomb your eyeballs like tiny, winged agents of chaos. You swat at them with one hand while holding your tool with the other, creating a sad little dance that the others pretend not to notice. A cow wanders past. You don't own the cow. No one knows who does. It just shows up. Always glaring. Always chewing. Probably plotting. You try to ignore it. It moves loudly, which sounds less like a greeting and more like a threat. You keep working. Hours pass. The sun climbs higher. Your tunic clings to you with a damp loyalty that borders on betrayal. Your fingers are so sore you can't remember what they looked like clean. Your stomach growls, but you know what's in your lunch bag and frankly, it's not worth the emotional investment. You finally take a break. You sit on a rock that may or may not be alive. You pull out your bread. It's hard enough to qualify as a weapon. You gnaw at it like a depressed squirrel. You chew slowly, as if by delaying digestion you can delay returning to work. You wash it down with water from a flask that tastes like old wood and regret. Nearby, Elspeth begins singing. It's a slow, mournful tune about a woman who married a turnip farmer and died of boredom. It's not clear if this is autobiographical. You hum along anyway, mostly to stay awake. Lunch ends. Work resumes. Now it's threshing time. Threshing, for the record, is what happens when you take your harvested grain and beat it with sticks until it gives up. It's messy, exhausting, and oddly therapeutic, sort of like group therapy, but with more hay in your eyes and fewer apologies. Someone starts yelling. Wymond stepped on a snake. Again. Mad Elric insists it was a divine sign. Elspeth says it was just Tuesday. Meanwhile, a cloud rolls in. Not the good kind. The ominous kind. You feel it before you see it. That shift in the air, that static tension, that sudden knowledge that your day is about to get wetter and worse. And just like that, it happens. Rain. Cold, bitter, sideways rain that hits your skin like nature's disapproval. There's no shelter. You keep working. Because you have to. Because there are no rain days, no labor rights, no HR departments to complain to. Just the mud. Always the mud. By the end of the day, you are more swamp than person. You drag yourself back toward a village. The sun is setting, casting everything in that eerie golden light that makes even the pigs look majestic for a second. Your arms ache. Your legs tremble. You're soaked, bruised, hungry, and slightly more dead inside than when you started. And yet, you're not quite miserable. Not entirely. Because as bad as it is, there's something strangely comforting about it all. The rhythm. The repetition. The weird sense of purpose you get from knowing you help grow food, even if it's just more turnips. Back in the village, you pass others returning from the fields. You exchange tired glances. Half smiles. The unspoken bond of mutual suffering. Someone hands you a piece of cheese. You don't ask where it came from. You just eat it. You trudge back to your hut. Your door creaks open. You collapse onto your straw mattress, which smells like mildew and surrender. And for a moment, before sleep takes you, you think about tomorrow, and how it'll be exactly the same. Because that's what the fields are. Not glamorous, not exciting, but consistent. Endlessly, painfully, grimly consistent. But don't worry. Tomorrow, we'll take a break. We'll explore the mysteries of medieval medicine. And you'll quickly wish we'd stayed in the mud. So when you're ready, you wake up, and something's not right. Your head feels like it's full of bees. Your throat is scratchy. Your nose is trying to leave your face. Every joint creaks like a church door in a horror story. In short, you've got a cold. Or maybe scurvy. Or the plague. Who knows? It's medieval Europe, and the bar for survival is lower than your current immune response. You need help. And by help, we mean you're going to the apothecary. Because there are no hospitals. No urgent care. Number 24-hour pharmacists wearing polo shirts and asking if you've tried ibuprofen. There's just one guy. In a hut. Who smells like mildew and boiling roots. Who may or may not be a wizard. And this guy is your best shot at not dying in your sleep. So before you set out on your trembling journey to health, take a moment, if you can still move your arm, to like this video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy this slow descent into medieval absurdity. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it? Are you tucked into bed in Toronto? Listening on a night shift in Manila? Or laying in the bath somewhere in New Zealand, wondering why I'm talking about plague rats? I love knowing where you are in this sleepy, strange global tavern of ours. Now, grab your crusty wool cloak and your remaining sense of hope. You're going to the apothecary. You shuffle down the muddy lane. Every step feels like you're made of rocks wrapped in wet fabric. You pass other villagers, none of whom make eye contact. No one wants to get what you have. In fact, one child throws a cabbage at you. A direct hit to the shin. You consider launching it back, but lifting your arm feels like wading through molasses made of sadness. At last, you arrive. The apothecary shop is cozy. If your definition of cozy includes dried lizard tails, 37 types of mold, and a pervasive aroma of vinegar, dead flowers, and long-forgotten responsibility. The doorway is draped in a curtain of bones and herbs, probably decorative, possibly warding off demons, definitely not sanitary. Inside, it's dim. You can barely see, but you can smell. Oh boy, can you smell? There's the musty reek of old parchment. The acrid sting of sulfur. The damp funk of mushrooms, growing in places mushrooms absolutely shouldn't be. You also catch notes of burnt feathers, rotten apple, desperation. Come in, a voice cackles from the back. Enter the apothecary. He's ancient. Or maybe just 40. It's impossible to tell in a world without skincare. He wears robes covered in stains of questionable origin, and his beard looks like it's been used to strain soup. His hands are permanently stained brown. His fingernails are long enough to qualify as weapons. You sit down on a stool made of old barrels and spider webs. You explain your symptoms: sore throat, fever, body aches, an overwhelming sense of doom. He nods sagely, as if you've described something deeply spiritual. Classic humoral imbalance, he mutters. Here we go. In case you've forgotten, medieval medicine revolves around humors. Not humor, as in laughter, you'll find none of that here. But the 4 bodily fluids believed to govern your entire existence: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you're sick, it's because you have too much or too little of one. Balance them, and you're fine. Fail, and you die. The apothecary peers into your eyes. He sniffs you. He taps your forehead like he's checking for hollow spots. Then he turns to his shelf, a nightmarish display of jars, powders, and mystery liquids. You see a jar of crushed beetles labeled nervousness, dried fox lungs, cough suppressant. Something called mummy powder, yes, actual ground-up Egyptian mummies, imported for high-end customers with disposable income and no ethics. Moldy bread, 4 wounds. Burnt hedgehog spines, for asthma, obviously. And your favorite, mouse bones soaked in vinegar, reserved for pains of the head, soul, and marital distress. He starts mixing. First, a base of boiled willow bark, the medieval aspirin. Promising. Then, 3 drops of fermented onion juice. Less promising. Then a generous pinch of something green that hisses when he touches it. He doesn't name it. Into a small ceramic bowl it goes. He grinds it with the enthusiasm of someone angry at his own fingers. He adds a few drops of wine, swirls it around, mutters a chant, either Latin or gibberish, and hands it to you. Drink. You hesitate. Now, he says. You sip. It tastes like betrayal and pickled regrets. Your eyes water. Your spine briefly leaves your body. You question every choice you've ever made, including being born. Should help, he says, smiling with 4 remaining teeth. If not, we can always try bleeding. Yes, bleeding, the medieval go-to for everything from headaches to hiccups to existential dread. The idea: remove the bad blood, restore balance. The reality: remove any chance you had of standing upright. The apothecary pulls out his bleeding kit. It's just a knife and a bowl. That's it. No gloves. No antiseptic. Just vibes. He starts rolling up your sleeve. You politely decline. He shrugs and offers leeches instead. Tiny, wriggling creatures in a glass jar. They squirm against the glass like little parasitic noodles. He tells you they like the taste of sorrow. You are not surprised. You ask if he has anything less wriggly. He thinks. Pulls out a ball of cloth soaked in camphor and sage. Hands it to you with instructions. Sniff this 5 times, say a prayer to Saint Erasmus, and sleep under a goat. You stare. He's serious. You thank him. You pay in coins, or if you're broke, and let's be honest, you are, a loaf of bread or a favor owed. He nods solemnly and slips your payment into a pouch shaped like a bladder. You don't ask whose. You leave the hut. The sunlight stabs your eyeballs like an overenthusiastic priest. Your stomach churns. The potion is either working or plotting against you. You walk home slowly, trying to ignore the taste of horseradish and despair lingering in your mouth. Back at your hovel, you lie down. The mattress, still full of straw, spiders, and shame, welcomes you like an old enemy. You clutch your herbal bundle. You murmur a prayer. You consider the goat thing. Outside, the apothecary lights another batch of herbs on fire. The smoke curls upward, taking with it the scent of desperation and rosemary. A child nearby coughs dramatically. Someone else screams. It's fine. Probably unrelated. And this, dear sleeper, is what passed for healthcare in the Middle Ages. No clinics. No diagnostics. No insurance. Just potions, plasters, prayers, and pure, uncut placebo. But if you're still alive tomorrow, that means it worked. Or you just weren't that sick. Next time, we're going darker. The dungeon. Chains. Torture devices. Screaming. Politics. And the medieval justice system, which is just as horrifying as you think. So when you're ready, you wake up, but this time, it's not in your straw mattress of lies. It's cold. Stone cold. And damp. So damp it feels like you're sleeping inside a frog's armpit. You're lying on the floor, or what passes for a floor, uneven stone, slick with centuries of human misery and questionable fluids. There's a drip. Always. Dripping. Somewhere in the darkness. You can't see it. You'll never find it. But it will haunt you. Welcome to the dungeon. No, you didn't commit a crime. You might have sneezed near a nobleman, or spoken ill of the king's toenail, or looked too long at someone's goose. Or maybe your neighbor just didn't like your face and decided to accuse you of heresy. Because in the glorious world of medieval justice, you don't need evidence. You just need bad luck. And now, here you are, shackled to a wall, in the dark, wearing what you slept in, which is also what you bled in, which is also, incidentally, what you're probably going to die in. Let's take a moment, before things get too medieval, to gently suggest that if you're somehow enjoying this strange, slow descent into the historical abyss, you should like this video and maybe subscribe. Only if you truly enjoy what we do here. And hey, drop a comment. Tell me what time it is where you are, and what poor life decision led you to fall asleep to descriptions of medieval torture. I genuinely love hearing from you, even if you're drifting off halfway through the word Inquisitor. Back to the dungeon. It's pitch black. The only light creeps in through a slit in the wall about the size of a ferret on a diet. Dust particles swirl in the air, catching the faintest ray of sunlight like they're auditioning for a tragic interpretive dance. The smell? Oh, my friend. It is a cocktail of despair. Mold, sweat, rusted iron, urine, wet rope, blood, rat breath, and something else. Something sweet and wrong, like decaying fruit mixed with lies. It hits your nose and stays there, nesting like a bat in your sinuses. You're not alone. There are others here. You can't see them, but you can hear them. The occasional cough, a moan, chains rattling, one guy muttering in Latin, possibly cursing God. Someone further down groans and then says, quietly, I regret nothing. Followed by a splash. You choose not to ask. A guard appears. You hear his footsteps long before you see him. Metal boots. Slow. Deliberate. Full of authority and deeply unearned confidence. His torch flickers into view, lighting up his face, sweaty, bored, and shaped like a potato that's been in a fistfight. Get up, he growls. You try. You fail. Your legs are made of stone. Not metaphorically. You've just been lying on stone so long your bones have unionized against movement. He drags you. Because this is interrogation day. A short walk down a long hall of screams leads you to the main room. And there it is. The rack. A large wooden frame with rollers at each end. It's basically medieval yoga with consequences. You're tied at the wrists and ankles, and then, ever so gently, stretched until your joints beg for mercy and your limbs resemble soft taffy. Still don't remember confessing, the guard asks. You point out, politely, that you have no idea what you're being accused of. He shrugs. That's what the rack is for. Of course. Because the medieval justice system operates on the logic of, if you confess, you're guilty. If you don't confess, you're extra guilty. And if you die before confessing, they'll just assume guilt posthumously and charge your family for the rope. Other devices await. The Iron Maiden. The thumbscrew. The heretic's fork, a charming metal rod placed between your chin and chest to keep you from moving your head. Sleepy? Too bad. Tired of existing? Well, here's a spiky chair. Let's talk about that one. The interrogation chair. It's a wooden seat covered in hundreds of metal spikes, with straps to hold you down. You sit. You scream. They ask you questions. You give answers. Mostly screams. The spikes don't puncture skin immediately, just enough to hurt. But if you shift too much, they start to dig in. Slowly. Intimately. It's a kind of furniture that says, we skipped IKEA and went straight to psychological horror. Then there's the strap paddo. You're hung by your arms behind your back and then drop suddenly, dislocating both shoulders. It's simple. Efficient. Very popular with inquisitors and sociopaths. If you're really unlucky, you might get the water cure, essentially medieval waterboarding. They pour water down your throat while pinching your nose, forcing you to feel like you're drowning. Repeatedly. In a time before dental hygiene. All of this is considered standard. All of this is legal. All of this is meant to find the truth. And you might think, but surely they didn't torture everyone? Correct. Just most people. Especially if you're poor. If you're a noble, you get a trial. A real one. With words. And maybe even a judge who isn't actively chewing something from a jar marked witchbane. But if you're a peasant, a baker, a tanner, a mun who once insulted a bishop's hat, into the dungeon you go. Fun fact, some towns even had mobile torture wagons. Yes, torture, to go. They'd roll into town like a very dark circus, wheel out the devices, and get to work in the square. Everyone would gather to watch. Children, grandmothers, the local drunk. They'd cheer, wince, or sell snacks. Because nothing says family outing like watching your neighbor confess to being a warlock under the influence of cheese. Let's take a moment now to consider the rat bucket. Yes. One of the more creative forms of persuasion. A metal bucket is placed open end down on your stomach. Inside, a hungry rat. The other end of the bucket is heated with fire. The rat, desperate to escape, can only go one way, through you. Historical sources are sketchy on how often it was used. But the fact that it existed at all is enough to haunt your dreams. And then, just when you think the torture's over, when your limbs are jelly and your mouth has confessed to crimes your ancestors haven't even committed yet, comes the sentence. Because confession was just step one. Now you'll be punished. Maybe branding. Maybe flogging. Maybe being paraded through the town with a sign reading, "I spoke ill of the Lord's turnips." Maybe a public hanging. Or burning. Or exile, which basically means being kicked out into the woods to be eaten by wolves and existential dread. The dungeon, however, stays silent, waiting for the next unlucky villager, for the next moment of panic, for the next sneeze in front of the wrong person. You're returned to your cell. You lie down on the floor again. You close your eyes. You try not to think about rats, spikes, or the guard's breath, which smelled vaguely of onions and unrepentant cruelty. And despite it all, you drift off. Because even in a medieval dungeon, sleep finds a way. Tomorrow, we leave the chains behind and step into something lighter. Much lighter. Spirituality. Monks, relics, and the smell of incense trying to cover centuries of unanswered prayers. So when you're ready, you wake up, and there's chanting. Low, rhythmic, calm. Not unpleasant, actually, if you can ignore the part where it sounds like a Gregorian boy band got trapped in a wine cellar. You blink awake. You're no longer in a dungeon. Congratulations, you've been moved up in the world. Welcome to the monastery. The floor is still stone, but slightly less damp. The straw mattress is still present, still lumpy, still suspicious. But now it smells faintly of incense, rather than blood and betrayal. Progress. Someone nearby is humming in Latin. You have no idea what the words mean, but they're definitely about sin, and bees, and something about the Lord's chest hair. Latin is flexible. You sit up. A bell rings. Not the charming kind. Not the come in for tea kind. This is a serious bell. This is the kind of bell that says, you will wake up. You will pray. And you will like it. You are in a monastery now, friend. And you are on monk time. Before we ring the next bell and shuffle off toward vespers or breakfast or whatever terrifying vegetable stew is being served today, take a moment, yes, right now, to like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you find yourself nodding off to medieval misery. And tell me, please, what part of the world you're floating in right now. Are you dozing in Denmark? Snuggled up in Brazil? Folding laundry in Kansas, and wondering how you got here? I love hearing where you're from, this sleepy, candlelit community of history nerds and accidental insomniacs. Now then, let's talk about faith. In the Middle Ages, religion isn't just something you do on Sundays. It is everything. It's the air you breathe, the food you eat, the reason your neighbor won't let you borrow a turnip on Wednesdays. The church controls time, land, money, and, most importantly, your eternal soul. And who's in charge of all this holiness? Monks. Yes, the monks. Walking symbols of poverty, chastity, and well-meaning silence. You, dear listener, have found yourself in a Benedictine monastery, a community of men who have renounced the world, shaved the tops of their heads, and committed their lives to prayer, labor, and deeply uncomfortable footwear. The day begins early. How early? Roughly 2:30 in the morning. Yes. You're woken up by the bell at an hour no sane person should even consider existing. It's called Matins, the Night Vigil. A lovely little service where everyone mumbles psalms by candlelight and tries not to fall asleep while standing. You shuffle to the chapel in your monk robes. They're itchy. Always itchy. They are made of wool. The scratchiest wool known to man. Dyed with sorrow and tailored by someone who deeply resented shoulders. You stand. You chant. You try to read the Latin text with one working eye and a brain that is still halfway inside a dream about cheese. The chapel is dark and cold, but peaceful. You feel something sacred stirring, or possibly gas. It's hard to tell on an empty stomach. After Matins, you return to your cell. You lie down, but only for a moment, because it's already time for lauds, the dawn prayer. No one said monk life was fun, just consistent. The monastic day is divided into 8 parts, known as the divine office, spaced throughout the day and night, like little pit stops for the soul. Matins, very early. Lauds, dawn. Prime, first hour of daylight. Terce, third hour. Sext, noon, not what you're thinking. None, ninth hour. Vespers, evening. Compline, before bed. It's like the worst group fitness schedule imaginable, except instead of sweating you're chanting, and instead of getting fit, you're getting right with God. In between services, there is work. Glorious, exhausting, painfully humble work. You might be in the scriptorium, copying manuscript by hand. Every letter carefully inked. Every mistake, a sin against both grammar and eternity. You dip your quill into oak gall ink. You scribe carefully onto vellum, which, by the way, is animal skin. So yes, even your notebook is screaming quietly. Or maybe you're in the fields, tilling soil, growing barley and cabbage and other foods that absolutely no one enjoys unless they are on the brink of starvation. Or perhaps your job is to tend the herb garden, with holy basil, mugwort, rosemary, and thyme. Not because monks are aspiring chefs, but because these herbs are medicinal. This is where health meets hope. You whisper prayers while crushing leaves, and try to believe that a nettle poultice will cure dysentery. It won't. Meals are simple. Bread. Maybe cheese. Usually lentils. Always eaten in silence. A bell rings. You sit at long wooden tables. A monk reads scripture while the rest of you chew slowly. You are allowed no conversation. If you need salt, you gesture. If you choke, you quietly apologize to God and die politely. You sleep on a wooden platform, or if you're lucky, a pile of straw that vaguely resembles a bed. You wear your robe at all times, because humility never sleeps. Also, central heating hasn't been invented yet, and the stone walls hold cold like a grudge. Now, let's talk about relics. Oh yes, the holy bits. Relics are sacred objects. Pieces of saints. Bones. Teeth. Shards of the true cross. The toenail of Saint Agnes. The shoulder blade of St. Thomas, and my personal favorite, the milk of the Virgin Mary, which was allegedly found in about 6 different places across Europe. Because medieval faith had the energy of a cosmic scavenger hunt. Pilgrims would travel for days, even weeks, to see these relics. They believed them to be miracle-working. Touch the skull of a saint, and your gout might vanish. Pray before the holy shin bone, and your crops might survive the next hailstorm. Some even brought wax replicas of body parts, a wax ear for earaches, a wax leg for limping. Like some strange build-a-blessing shop. And monasteries? They loved relics, because relics meant pilgrims. And pilgrims meant money. More feet through the door equals more alms equals better cloisters equals more candles equals more illuminated manuscripts about how sinful money is. Irony levels, saintly. Relics were housed in reliquaries, ornate boxes made of gold, crystal, and wishful thinking. Sometimes they were shaped like the actual body part. Yes, there are entire collections of glittering, jeweled arms. Just arms, floating on shelves, pointing toward salvation. Let's not forget miracles. Monks were expected to chronicle them. A blind man touches the hem of a relic box, suddenly sees. A child dying of pox eats a blessed figure. Lives. A woman barren for 20 years prays, drinks holy water, and births twins the size of ham hocks. Were these real? Well, faith doesn't ask questions. It demands answers. The monastery itself is quiet, peaceful, even. But it isn't all angelic hymns and tidy herb gardens. There's boredom. Crushing, spiritual boredom. There's envy. Yes, even monks compare sandals. There's exhaustion, cold, hunger, the ever-present scent of goat. And don't forget, you gave up everything. No possessions, no family, no money, no TikTok, just God, books, and a schedule tighter than a nun's corset. Why do it? Because for many, this was the only life that offered purpose. 4 younger sons with no inheritance. 4 peasants craving stability. For the wounded, the lost, the idealistic. For people who believed deeply, fully, unshakably, that this world was temporary, and the next one was worth suffering for. And even in the middle of the night, in the cold, surrounded by chanting in candle wax and stomachs growling in Latin, there was a kind of peace. A silence deeper than sleep. A stillness that made everything else, the noise of the world, the dirt, the rats, the war, the fire, fall away. You close your eyes. A bell rings again. It's time for Compline, the last prayer. You shuffle back to the chapel. You whisper your final psalm. You bow. You cross yourself. You return to your cell. The air is cold. The straw pokes you in 7 separate theological metaphors. You sleep. Because tomorrow, the bell rings again. But not yet. Not tonight. Next time, we climb the social ladder all the way to the top. Feasts, furs, fools, and flatulence. That's right. It's time to visit the nobility. You wake up under something heavy. Not metaphorically. Literally. Your face is buried in fur. Your legs are tangled in linen. There's a strong smell of wax, roses, and something slightly roasted. You push the heavy coverlet off and squint at your surroundings. It's warm. Very warm. There's a fire in the hearth. Tapestries on the walls. Candles. Carpets. A ceiling. All very unpeasant-like. You are not in a field, or a monastery, or a rat-haunted tenement. No. You are in a castle. Specifically, a bedchamber belonging to a noble. Perhaps a count. A baron. A lord. Or possibly the youngest child of a duke whose only job is to be alive and not ruin dinner. Either way, you've made it. Welcome to the top of the feudal food chain, where the butter is plentiful, the wine is flowing, and the body odor is still a problem, just better disguised. There's a thump at the door. It opens. A servant walks in without knocking. He is holding a basin. It is filled with tepid water. My lord, he mumbles. Or my lady. Or possibly my liege. Medieval titles are like collectible cards. Everyone wants one. No one knows what they actually do. You sit up. The bed creaks. Because you are not alone. There is a dog. 2 dogs, actually. One is snoring. One is farting. Nobles love dogs. They warm the feet, eat the scraps, and bite the occasional idiot. They're your closest companions in a world without television or anti-anxiety meds. The basin is placed near you. You wash your face with water that smells faintly of rosemary and disappointment. The servant dries your hands with a cloth that is surprisingly clean. And then you dress. Dressing is not a solo sport at this level of society. You are assisted. Layer by layer. Linen undershirt. Woolen hose. Tunic. Surcoat. Belt. Cloak. Furs. Boots. Hat. Jewelry. Sword. More jewelry. Possibly a feather. You end up looking like a Renaissance fair exploded on you. And this is just morning wear. Now pause for a moment. Sit up straighter in your peasant-free bed, reach over to your scribe or phone, and gently click that like button if you're still awake. If you've nodded off, excellent. That means the history is boring in all the right ways. But if you're still here, drop a comment and tell me the hour. 3 a.m.? 7 p.m.? The witching hour in Saskatchewan? It always amazes me how many sleepy minds gather around this absurd little campfire of sarcasm and suffering. Right. Back to the castle. Let's talk about food. Because life at the top? It smells like meat. Big meat. Loud meat. Roasted on spits. Dripping with grease. Pigs, geese, swans, hares, even peacocks. Yes, peacocks. With their feathers reattached post-roasting for dramatic flair. Is it wasteful? Yes. But so is putting gold leaf on your pastry and calling it humble. Breakfast is light. Maybe bread and wine. Or beer. Or both. It's unclear whether medieval nobles ever drank water that didn't come with fermentation. By lunch, the main meal of the day, things escalate. We're talking multi-course feasts, stews, fish, tarts, more meat, pies shaped like animals, pies made of animals, and, of course, the almighty trenchers. A trencher, if you're unfamiliar, is not a medieval tool of war. It's stale bread used as a plate. You eat the food on top of the bread. Then, if you're feeling brave or poor, you eat the bread. If you're too fancy, you donate it to the servants, or dogs, or God, or some combination of all three. Table manners exist. Sort of. You don't eat with forks yet. That's a sin. Forks are considered suspiciously foreign, too delicate, and possibly satanic. You eat with your fingers and maybe a spoon. You use a knife to cut things, preferably your food, not your enemies, though sometimes lines blur. You are expected to belch discreetly. Not loudly. Just a little noble burp of satisfaction. Napkins? Rare. Hand washing? Frequent, but symbolic. Finger bowls of rosewater are passed around. You swirl your fingertips and pretend you're clean. Let's talk about entertainment. Because once your stomach is full and your sleeves are covered in gravy, it's time to be amused. There are jesters. Yes, real jesters. Some are funny. Some are terrifying. Most are a little of both. They wear bells. They insult people for a living. They are the original stand-up comics, except they also juggle and risk execution if their punchlines flop. There are minstrels, musicians, troubadours, poets, all hired to serenade you with songs of doomed love, heroic battle, and the occasional fart joke wrapped in metaphors about falcons. There are dancers, acrobats, fire breathers, puppet shows, storytellers, and, of course, your peers. Because nothing entertains a noble more than gossiping about other nobles. He only has 3 hunting dogs. I heard her dowry included no silver. She accidentally wore wool to a velvet feast. Scandal. Then there's the hunting. Hunting is more than a sport. It is a declaration of status, of power, of being rich enough to spend the entire day riding around in the woods trying to kill something when you could easily just send a servant to the market. You mount your horse. Not personally, of course. Someone helps. Your boots are polished. Your gloves are embroidered. Your hawk is named after a Greek philosopher you can't pronounce. You gallop dramatically. You chase deer, boar, rabbits, or whatever poor creature dared exist in your forest without permission. You do not, under any circumstances, do your own skinning or butchering. That's what peasants are for. Back in the castle, the fires burn constantly. Not for ambience, but because stone castles are freezing. The walls are thick. The windows are narrow. There's no glass, just shutters, or if you're fancy, oiled parchment. Drafts are constant. You wear layers upon layers indoors. Your bed has curtains, not for privacy, but to trap your body heat like a sweaty cocoon of survival. Now let's talk about bathrooms. Ah yes, even the nobility must go. You don't have a toilet. You have a garderobe, a charming little closet with a stone or wooden seat over a chute that leads, well, somewhere. Sometimes into the moat. Sometimes into a cesspit. Sometimes into your neighbor's basement if you're really unpopular. To wipe, you might use moss. Or a rag. Or nothing. Because the Middle Ages were not known for their commitment to comfort. Perfume, however, is everywhere. Nobles are obsessed with masking smells. You anoint your hands with oils. You burn sweet-smelling herbs. You wear pomandis, small balls filled with fragrant spices, hung from your belt or neck. You bathe occasionally, more than peasants, certainly. Once a month, if you're daring. Twice, if you're scandalous. And you are always concerned with display. Your clothes, your jewelry, your household, all of it screams, look how rich I am. And also how blessed. And possibly how recently I married into money. Marriages are contracts. You don't marry for love. You marry for land. Or alliances. Or titles. Or peace. Or horses. Love is an awkward bonus if it happens, like getting fries at the bottom of your fast food bag. Weddings are elaborate affairs, with feasts, music, and awkward noble children forced to smile while their parents sign away their future. The bride is often barely a teenager. The groom is older. The dynamic is uncomfortable but common. And women? Let's be honest, noble women are trapped. They have more food, more clothes, and more protection than peasants, yes. But they are still expected to marry who they are told, bear children constantly, manage estates, endure childbirth without pain relief, and smile politely while doing it. And if they don't produce sons? Well, then the fault must lie with them, obviously. Spoiler, it doesn't. But some women find ways to thrive. Some rule. Some write. Some build. Some manipulate court politics with the grace of a chess master and the subtlety of a cat with a vendetta. And when the day ends, the candles are snuffed. The fire dims. You climb back into your grand four-poster bed, stuffed with down and draped in velvet. It is heavy, warm, and for a brief moment, with a full stomach, a slight buzz from spiced wine, and a belly laugh from a crude jester joke still lingering in your brain, you feel something like peace. Even up here, in the towers of privilege, there is worry. There's war, inheritance drama, jealousy, the plague, the church, the king, the growing murmurs of rebellion from the peasants down below. But not tonight. Tonight, you dream. Because tomorrow, you're invited to court. And that is an entirely different beast.